over here in the United Kingdom, you know, we have a series of movies that are eternally popular. They're screened all the time on television. They are the carry-on films. They're like the saucy seaside card humour, you know, it's kind of busty ladies, rather dense men, very clever, intricate plots, a mixture of Charlie Chaplin, Norman Wisdom, you know, Harold Lloyd, you name it, and all those little noises that make those films absolutely iconic and still so fun today. I'm so surprised that nobody's tried to cancel this bag of fun, well, right now. But of course, they remain a firm favourite with the British public. What's interesting to note though, way back in 1967, well, early 1966, the bosses who I met at Pinewood Studios when there was a celebratory sort of dinner there, well, they told me they were trying to lure a particular star into that particular series. You see, the carry-ons had not done that well over in the United States, and what they really needed was somebody that they felt could make that particular series go with a bang. Their initial idea was to look at someone like Bob Hope, but you see, the carry-on films were not necessarily very lucrative for the actors. An average fee for a 6-week shoot was around about £5,000. No residuals either. A lot of money, of course, back in the 1960s, but when you sort of consider it, a flat fee. That's why they tended to use the same actors time and time again. Now, they'd written a script, Carry On Up the Khyber. Now, when Bob Hope said no, they cast around once again, and they figured someone like a Jack Benny character, but no, there was no interest there also. So they kind of searched a little bit more and fell upon Phil Silvers. Now, I was lucky enough again to interview the beautiful Anita Harris, who was his co-star in Carry On Up the Khyber, and she was, as ever, incredibly kind about working with a Hollywood icon. Phil, of course, had got his break at places like the Latin Quarter in New York City, stand-up comedy, even appeared in the very last movie by Marilyn Monroe in 1962 called Something's Got to Give, which was abandoned, of course, sadly due to her demise. What was interesting was, though, that Peter Rogers and Anita confirmed this, that Phil became the highest paid ever carry-on star, because when he arrived in London, he needed to be put up at a certain hotel, i.e. the Dorchester, and they were shooting down at a seaside resort in East Sussex, so more expense. And more importantly, he felt that this was his film and the other people were just in it around him. Now, the Carry On films were expertly written by a series of well-crafted comedy writers, but Phil felt it needed to be more adept to his own comedy intuition, you know, the sort of thing. So he was suggesting gags all the time. And basically, the Carry On films, as I say, took 6 weeks to make. They didn't do retakes. The first take was the one that they went with, and that's what made these particular films profitable. Apparently, according to Peter Rogers and Gerald Thomas, they had hoped to bring Phil back. But after the, shall we say, rather trying time of working with Mr. Phil Silvers on his one and only Carry On film, they very much politely declined. Even though Phil came back to London and appeared on stage in Richmond, that's right, in London, well, there was still no call back. Phil never understood this, of course, being a Hollywood icon, at least in his mind, and as Anita Harris confirmed, it was all very nice working with Mr. Phil Silvers, but you lived in Phil Silvers' world, and everybody else was just moving around him. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.